Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the May 15th, 2017 episode of Rebels, Rogues, and Redbeards, the Triple R podcast. A podcast about absolutely nothing, and yet somehow everything. We're going to go ahead and kick off the evening by talking about the fact that we are now what I'm going to call a super heavyweight booth, because we've gone from a 3-man booth to a 4-man booth, and yes, you can consider that a fat joke at our own expense, at least mine anyway, because I think Joseph and Anwar have actually been doing fantastic in terms of improving their health, but myself, I've been enjoying a few too many trips to Taco Bell here recently. So I think, am I off base there at all, fellas?
No, I think you're about right.
No, that was definitely a fat joke. I don't take full offense, just mild offense, and I definitely spend my fair share of trips at the Taco Bell as well. Now that they got, especially now they have their little chicken tortilla chips.
Try those tonight.
AKA Taco Bell chicken nuggets.
Is that not the craziest thing?
It's crazy and genius.
Did you try those yet?
I did.
I have not.
What did you think?
Again, it's Taco Bell chicken nuggets. You know, I got 6 for $1 or $2. I'm good. You dip anything in nacho cheese, and I'm happy.
See, and that's the thing. I felt like that was the selling point for us, or for me tonight. We tried it tonight, and it was okay, and it had a little bit of a sweet kick, a little bit. But once you dipped it in the hot nacho cheese, that was it. I was done. I was good.
I mean, that sells you on anything, though, Anwar, to be honest.
What, hot nacho cheese?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because when they try to tell me to get cheese fries and they ask me if I want the nacho cheese, like this cheese whiz, it's like a blasphemy to me. When you ask for cheese fries, and that's the crap you get on there. It's terrible. I'd rather just throw it back in their face.
Well, you guys officially ruined my Monday, because I've been eating healthy for the last 2 weeks, and I've only had two cheat meals, and now hearing you guys talk about that is making me want it.
Well, now that he's spoken up, let's go ahead and take this moment to introduce the 4th man in our booth on a permanent basis. We are now welcoming Mr. Andrew Silly to the Triple R podcast. Andrew was a guest on here a couple of weeks ago, filled in for Joseph, was a stunt double for Joseph at that point in time, but now I think we've got kind of a dual threat here, where we can go to Joseph or Andrew and almost be talking to the same person there in some regards anyway. So we want to welcome Andrew to the show. Andrew, how are you this evening?
Good. Well, as good as I can be doing for a Monday, but
and sorry to cramp on your cheat meals there as well, but
you'll be fine.
We'll eventually get Joseph out of the crew, so it'll go back to a 3-man booth.
Organizing a coup already.
Wow, man. Quick. His first night, and he's already trying to usurp someone from the crew.
I know. Usually, you let things build up for a few weeks before you stab them in the back.
I tell you.
Right off the bat.
At least convince them you're in here for the good of the entire group here before you go putting that shiv in somebody's rear end there. But
I want.
Why couldn't it just be the wait? Why does it have to be the rear end? Why couldn't it just be the back? Just a very odd placement. Just to say, you could easily accomplish the same thing without having to go there.
Yeah, well, maybe as Andrew was saying,
you're watching a little bit too much odds.
But as Andrew was saying here a moment ago too, the whole thing of it being a Monday, it's definitely been a Monday. We can say that in the world of IT. But I don't talk a whole lot about what I do for a living, because of the fact that I don't like to talk about what I do for a living. But at any rate, we're also joined by our 2 regular castmates here, Mr. Andrew. Andrew. Mr.
Joseph's new name.
It's just going worse and worse by the second here. But we're also joined by Mr. Anwar Perez. How are you, Anwar?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Fantastic. Appreciate you being here as always. And also rounding out the cast, Mr. Joseph McGee. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. The original Joseph McGee. Just go ahead and put that out there. The original.
Not the stunt
Often duplicated, never. Wait, often imitated, never duplicated.
There you go.
Although some people think I'm duplicated because Andrew, on more than one occasion, has been confused for me. I guess there are worse people to be mistaken for.
There you go.
And maybe those people weren't the smartest people as well. So.
And one of them
Andrew with his second slide there of the night.
That's all right. I can dish it out. I can dish it out myself.
Hey,
it's all good.
You know, we talk about wrestling. I just wanted to draw the heel and face line in the sand. So
Fair enough.
But we wanted to get on into the nuts and bolts of our show here this evening. We have our little production meetings and whatnot in advance of these things, and we were going to talk about some different stuff here tonight, but then we started to say, well, you know what? We've got a new Marvel movie out in the form of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Why don't we talk about not only that movie, but the entire state of the Marvel Universe in terms of where they're going with their films from here on out. It's a very interesting time. This movie has performed incredibly well. Talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I think a majority of the crew here has seen it. I think who hasn't seen the movie yet?
I believe the two Josephs haven't seen it. So.
No, I have seen it. And,
you have?
And spoiler alert, they all die at the end. You're welcome.
This isn't Rogue One.
Yeah. Oh,
hopefully,
yeah.
we're a good 6 months past that, so hopefully anyone gives me crap about spoilers. Come on.
I would hope if you haven't seen that movie by now, you're not going to. So
this is true.
But you know, I'll go ahead and kick off things by talking about the movie, and I'm going to gush about this.
I'm just very happy that this week, we're spending this time talking about great movies and not shitty movies like Avatar. Thank you.
This guy.
If you haven't if you haven't seen our previous episode, tune in to where we're talking about the Pandora World of Avatar expansion to Disney's Animal Kingdom Park. You can hear more of Joseph laying the smackdown on the life and times of, or I should say, the imagination of one James Cameron and the Avatar
the lack
films.
of imagination.
I wouldn't say lack of. I mean, the fact that he created brand new technology so we can enjoy the 3D movies we have today just for that movie. I mean, he waited till the technology was there to make that movie.
Yeah, he gave us great technology, but a played out story that I've seen at least 2 other times in 2 other films.
Now, you compared it to Fern Gully, but, like you said in our little meeting there as well, they weren't 10 feet tall in Fern Gully, the little creatures, whatever they were. I don't even remember what they were called in that movie, to be honest with you.
Weren't they just fairies?
They were?
They were like woodland creatures. But the fact is, you have to make some changes. You can't just straight do a straight carbon copy. You make it just different enough so people who don't know any better just think you're a freaking genius and go spend $1 billion to watch your movie.
Well, I do have to agree with you. Watching Avatar was probably one of the most painful things I've done in my life.
Wow, haters.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 2 billion people are wrong.
It was an 8-hour-long movie.
Well, like we said in the previous episode, we got good news and bad news for you. There are evidently going to be 4 more of those movies.
No, there's not. James Cameron will not live that long.
Man,
Oh, man. Well,
unless he comes back from the future as a Terminator to make these movies,
and that's entirely possible.
He's got that kind of money. He's got the money to make that happen if the technology catches up to him.
But not to get totally derailed on our talk of Avatar and whatnot, I want to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy here to kick off this week's show, and I will go ahead and gush about the movie. I had a chance to see it, and really and truly, I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this might have been my favorite Marvel movie. And I'm talking the entire gamut, Captain America, Iron Man, the whole thing. This one right here might have been my favorite. And the reason why I'm saying that is because this movie, and it might be just because of the fact that it's as different as it is. This is not sort of the formula that has become the norm for the Marvel movies, and we're going to talk about more about that later in the episode here. But this movie and the first one as well, has such heart, and this one in particular explores so many dynamics in terms of relationships. You have, father and son, loved ones squabbling back and forth, sisters and whatnot. There's, to me, in my mind, I couldn't find a dynamic that someone could not latch onto and say, hey, that's stuff I've been through. And it just happens to be coinciding with what all these characters are encountering. So because of the fact that it meshed that great sci-fi visual with all that recognizable stuff and did it so well. I mean, these characters and these actors have just done a phenomenal job of putting all this stuff together. But, that's me. That's my take on this. I'll throw it to Andrew, our new partner here. Andrew,
yes, throw it to the guy who hasn't seen the movie.
Oh, see, here again, I get confused with the stuntmen in the room. All right, we'll flip the switch then. Joseph, what was your take on the film, sir?
So, you say Guardians Volume 2 may be your favorite of all the Marvel movies, and I don't even know if it's my favorite Guardians movie. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a great film. I loved every minute of it. You kind of hit the nail right on the head on the, it was about family, and it's about like those relationships. My only real beef with Guardians Volume 2 was that it tried too hard to be funny. They took a lot of the things that happened like organically in the first one. Like Drax had some of the funniest lines in the first movie that weren't even intentional, and it seemed like a lot of things that they gave him in this second movie were a little forced. Again, they're just trying to be funny. They kind of knew, they kind of saw where their bread was buttered and really went all in on it. Kind of the same thing with Baby Groot. Not so much from the comedy aspect, but from like a cuteness overload. Because for that. At the end of Guardians 1, for like a 20-second clip, you see Baby Groot dancing, and they parlayed that into quite a bit of screen time for Baby Groot in Volume 2. And again, can't really blame him for that. I would do the same thing. It's not just a movie; it's a vehicle for marketing as well, and they definitely marketed it really extremely well. And they're going to sell a shit ton of Baby Groot merch over the next year. But it did have probably my favorite line in all of the Marvel movies when they were talking trash to Rocket, and Star-Lord called him a trash panda. That was hilarious. Like, is that worse? Oh yeah, it's definitely worse.
I think between that and the line where Yondo is asking, well, is Mary Poppins cool? And he's cool, man. So,
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. Yeah, it was like the theater exploded when he said that line.
A lot of good moments in there. Anwar, what was your take on the film, sir?
Great movie. I was very happy to definitely see it. It was good stuff. I wouldn't say, I don't know if it's any better or worse, or not worse, but I don't know if it's any better than the first one, only because it's, it did take place it's Volume 2, so it's almost like you could probably easily do a double feature and it'd still be kind of just one episode. It just seemed, it wasn't like a separate entity into itself without the first movie. Like, it was literally just kind of two pieces to the pie. It was very good. It was still not my favorite Marvel movie or my favorite comic book movie, which isn't a Marvel movie. However, it's definitely up there. I mean, both Guardians movies are top 5. I'm a big fan of Guardians since the reintroduction of them into the comic book scene in 08, 09, and probably back to 07 when they relaunched and found a lot of success with a lot of the space stuff in Marvel. And so I've been a fan of the comics since then. So when they announced the movie, I was definitely very excited, but at the same time nervous because I wasn't sure how weird are Marvel fans are going to be. You're a common fan, are they going to want to get with something like this? This is not bread and butter Captain America or Iron Man. It's Guardians of the Galaxy, like random characters thrown together.
I think
these aren't household names. And it definitely, I think that's why the first one was such a surprise hit. And I think he also kind of hit on the head with the Volume 2 and how it could be almost like because from a continuity standpoint, it follows like right after Volume 1 or the first movie. Because it's only, I think, a few months from a storyline standpoint apart. So it could have easily just been chopped in two, part one, part two, because it has that flow. Because again, it's all kind of that same timeline.
Yep. And I think what you guys were touching on there, in regard to this is such a different take on what's going on in the Marvel Universe in terms of it not occurring on Earth. This is out in space. We've started to see now sort of the far reaches of what the Marvel Universe encapsulates. That being, all this stuff that doesn't necessarily happen here on terra firma. And they were going to have to go there at some point because involving the Infinity Stones and the whole Infinity Gauntlet thing with Thanos and all that, it was bound to happen at some point in time. But
you can play the whole everything's grounded in Captain America and even in Iron Man or any of the movies. But once you hit Guardians and you've already set, if you even watched the first Avengers movie, you knew they were going. Even Thor is, because Thor is so ingrained in Marvel, it's kind of hard to say that as a that's not even too much of a stretch because people believe, we've grown up with Norse mythology of Thor and all these, you learn about in school about how the Vikings and all this stuff. So that's not too far out of stretch. However, when they introduced Thanos at the end credit scene of Avengers, you can't, if that's the path you're going, it's going to get weird. It's going to be like, all right, it's going to be not just, Hydra or the Mandarin or whoever. It's going to be Thanos and space pirates and all kinds of crazy stuff. But that's truly the crux of the Marvel Universe as a whole, like thinking not just here on Earth, but just in the universe itself.
Yep. So just in kind of wrapping up, and Andrew, I don't mean to leave you out of this, but since you haven't seen it, I don't think it's really worth throwing you a bone here and asking you to chime in with your star rating. But Anwar, we'll go to you first. If you had to give it a star rating, what would you give this movie?
6 stars.
Out of
6. Or 5. Wait.
Yeah, I think you mean, but only in the Tokyo Dome, right?
How many dives were in that in that movie? Anybody catch that?
I think you could probably
count. I'd say it's a good solid. Out of 10, that's a good solid 8.
Yeah. Joseph, how about you, sir?
Yeah, I don't do stars. For me, it's a simple thumbs up or thumbs down, and this is a big thumbs up.
Yeah, definitely from me as well. I think this is a movie that you could realistically take just about anybody to, and I think you would definitely benefit from having seen the first one, but if you had to bring somebody in totally sight unseen, they could probably get enough information from what's presented to be able to see this and not, be missing a whole lot. But at the same time, definitely a fantastic addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. One more tip of the cap to those guys and all the creative minds behind the scenes doing great things in terms of not only establishing these characters but continuing to build an entire, as we've already described, an entire cinematic universe that includes everybody from Ant-Man all the way up now to Star-Lord. So it's great stuff all the way around in my opinion. But moving on from there, we want to get into our first real big topic of the evening, that being our outlook and our take on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And what I mean by that is what have been some of our favorite films, characters, stories, even some of the actors, and just in sort of encapsulating what we have experienced with the Marvel Cinematic Universe here so far. And for me, I'm an old school Captain America fan, and I've enjoyed what they've done with Cap so far. There was a point where, in my mind, I was kind of hoping they went a little bit more towards the Ultimates version of Captain America than they have. But, if you know what I'm talking about and you're familiar with the Ultimate Universe, that was kind of a splinter version of what Marvel was doing there a while back. It was a little bit more visceral take on the Avengers, but at the same time, I think they've borrowed a lot of it and the classic presentation of the Avengers characters as well. But that was really something that I wanted to see a little bit more of out of Cap, but at the same time, I've enjoyed what they've done with him specifically. And outside of Guardians Volume 2, I'd have to say that my favorite of the movies that they've released so far is probably Winter Soldier. And it's kind of that almost Empire Strikes Back presentation, in that it's the darker of the movies in terms of where they went with introducing the Winter Soldier and all the conflict and whatnot that's involved there. But I'm going through it around the room here. So Andrew, since you didn't get to chime in on the last subject there very much, what's your favorite moment from the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far?
I don't know why the film resonated with me so much, but Ant-Man is probably my favorite out of the entire Marvel universe so far. And
that's an interesting pick.
I feel like it's an unpopular opinion as well. And honestly, I'm excited to see what they do with Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I think is about a year out from being released.
That is correct.
So, I felt like that movie could realistically connect with anyone from the age of 4 all the way to 80. And it kept my attention the entire time. Just the plot and the way it kept me on the edge of my seat. It's funny saying that about a guy who gets into a costume and can shrink down to the size of an ant, but it pulled me in more than films like Iron Man or Captain America or any of those. I think I looked at it as the underdog, I guess, and for me, it executed everything a good film needs.
And for me, when they announced it was going to be Paul Rudd playing Ant-Man, I kind of was like, really, Paul Rudd? I didn't really see him in that mold, but he pulled it off, and he did a tremendous job. It's kind of like when they got Chris Pratt, when they announced Chris Pratt to play Star-Lord, I was like, it's like the fat guy from Parks and Rec. Kind of had that same reaction, but again, they both killed it and absolutely made it work, and they made those characters.
Yeah, even up until I saw Ant-Man, I was very. I didn't have my hopes too high with Paul Rudd, but as you said, Joseph, he knocked it out of the park, and that's one of the big selling points on the Ant-Man and the Wasp for me.
And I think that it's worth pointing out as well that you mentioned the everyman there, Andrew, that this has been kind of the bread and butter of Marvel, even in the comics themselves, is that they have been very good forever about having some opportunity to connect with the everyman, with these characters. There's some element of all these guys that you can seemingly latch on to. And with Ant-Man, he really is just some average dude who happens to look up and get access to this suit, who then makes the best of it in terms of becoming a true blue hero. So it's fantastic story there, and definitely something I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in the future, not only from a standpoint of him as a solo character or as a duo with the Wasp, but also in terms of what they could potentially do with him in the future Avengers films as well. Anwar, how about you, sir?
For me, I think Winter Soldier is still the best Marvel movie, hands down. I know it may not, and I think, and you could have different things. It may not be the most fun, I would think. Like out of Guardians, that's kind of a fun movie to watch. But I think Winter Soldier just was the perfect. You could take out the superhero elements, and it could be just like any other kind of political thriller that you have, kind of like your clear and present dangers and things like that. I mean, it's just so good of a storyline, and I was a big fan of the storyline going in, with Bucky being the Winter Soldier, and it used to be a joke in comic books that no one stays dead unless you're Bucky Barnes, because Bucky got killed off in the 1940s, 1950s, and they never, out of all the characters, he was never one that they got brought back. I mean, they brought back Jason Todd, who was voted to get killed off as the second Robin in Batman. A fan vote killed him off, and they did. But they brought him back. They didn't. They never brought back Bucky. But Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting at the time, they came. They said, "Hey, let's do this." So I was a big fan of that. So I've been a big fan of the Captain America characterization. You hit the nail on the head. It's very much a combination of your Marvel 616 universe and your Ultimates line, which the Ultimates line, if nothing else, if somebody were to say that nothing good came out of that, the one thing that came out of it, and this may not be common knowledge for some people because they assume that is where you get Nick Fury as Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes.
Mark Millar was like, hey, I want to. Him and Brian Hitch were like, hey, we're gonna make Nick Fury. We're gonna do something different with him. And they were like, well, let's make him black. But it wasn't just like let's just make him like any. They're like, let's just make him look like Samuel L. Jackson. And so that is literally, you read the comic, you're like, that's Samuel L. Jackson. This is in 2002. This isn't within the last, this is a good 6 years before the movie came out. Iron Man came out, and he was cast as Nick Fury. So if nothing else, that's where it comes from. And I think even the hospital scene at the end of Captain America: First Avenger is in the Ultimates as a piece. So I mean, that's where that came from as far as the actual like tie-in from the Ultimate. Like they took a bunch of parts, and I like the Captain America characterization. I mean, I think kind of continue what Andrew said and what I said earlier about Guardians. Guardians had succeeded, and it needed to succeed so you could have movies like Ant-Man and Doctor Strange.
Yes.
Because there's not as a kid growing up, it's one thing to think, well, of course one day they'll have Spider-Man. One day they'll have an X-Men movie. But to say, hey, one day I'm going to really hope for this Ant-Man guy. He's going to have his own movie. I just know it. Or even like on the TV side of things, like, okay, Luke Cage is going to have a show? What?
Yeah,
so,
but really, like Iron Man, the first Iron Man 2008 had to succeed to really be a whole cinematic universe.
I agree.
If Iron Man was Iron Man 2, because Iron Man 2 is probably the worst movie in the cinematic universe, I don't think we're talking about it like we are today.
Yeah, there had to be that jumping off point to even see if the Marvel characters were going to be interesting and palatable to moviegoers as a whole. So
they were all in, and I will. But they were all in. You have to, opening night when they had that stinger at the end when it became a popular thing to have a post credit scene, and then they had the Incredible Hulk a couple months later. I mean, with Downey Jr. talking about putting a team together at the end and showing up, that they had all their bets on that. So I almost think that failure or not, I have a feeling they probably would have seen it too, at least the Avenger movie, and then all right, cool, we're done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but they could have quit then. But now we're, there's been like a dozen movies. It seems like, and by the time it's all said and done, there may be even more. My personal favorite throughout the whole, I'm kind of with Anwar. Winter Soldier was just a phenomenal movie, and I don't know if anything could really top that. I mean, and he kind of, he kind of talked about being like a clear and present danger. To me, it's more like a Manchurian Candidate.
Very much so.
Because it can stand alone. Like take away the comic book elements, and you can stand alone. It's just a fantastic film. That was actually one of the first movies that I introduced my wife to in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and she, absolutely loved it. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention again the original Iron Man. Like I absolutely loved the original Iron Man, and I think it not only was it a great movie, but it set the tone for really the entire universe, as well as Captain America: First Avenger. Both the first two Captain America movies are definitely up there.
Oh yeah.
And again, I think had those movies not been as take away the financial success, if they weren't as critically acclaimed, if they had come out with like a cinematic, if they come out with movies that were akin to like Daredevil in 2003. I don't think we're sitting here talking about it the way we are today, and they're not sitting on a multi-billion-dollar empire.
Definitely not.
But again, yeah, for me it's Winter Soldier, but close second goes to the first Iron Man movie and the first Captain America.
And it's worth pointing out here as well. All their successes have been recent, but there have been a lot of swings and misses, for lack of a better way of putting it, in terms of the things that Marvel has produced in the past. Of course, this was before Marvel was owned by Disney and the cash machine that exists there with them. But at the same time, as you say, if they were still flopping out these huge turds that were, the things like the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck and, the Elektra stuff, and even, the Fantastic Four movies have really never been good. They've never gotten off the ground, seemingly. They've gone from okay to, you might as well say, terrible, in my opinion. But, the other stuff, aside from the X-Men and a couple of the Spider-Man movies, this was really the turning point for them in saying, okay, like you guys already mentioned, we are all in on this thing now. So it's still, something that's got a tremendous amount of legs to it in terms of where they could go in the future. And we're going to talk about that here in a few moments as we get on down the road here with the program. But for right now,
really, like I'm saying, like a lot of those movies you mentioned too. I mean, because again, they're all Marvel properties, but they happen. They're not a part of this universe that really started in 2008 with Iron Man, and there have been some stinkers, since 2008 as well. They haven't all been home runs. They haven't all even been doubles. There've been some pretty bad ones as well in the cinematic universe.
And I can't
wait to talk about those.
I was going to say that's a good segue to our next segment, which we're going to talk about the things that have not quite gone too well in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But before we get into that, I want to take our first break. I'll be back here in a few moments. Appreciate you guys joining us here on the Triple R podcast. Stay tuned.
Just because
Welcome back, everybody. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on the Rebels, Rogues, and Redbeards podcast. This is our Marvel Cinematic Universe program where we're talking all about the Marvel movies. We have talked thus far about the new film that's out there in theaters now, that being Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We've discussed our favorite aspects of the MCU, but now we're going to throw it to Joseph as he was chomping at the bit there as we closed out the last segment to talk about the things that we have not been that big of a fan of in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, Joseph, lay it away, sir.
Well, first and foremost, I think the one thing I probably like the least is Iron Man 2. And really, to a lesser extent, Iron Man 3. You know, both Iron Man sequels were just weren't good. I mean, 3 was definitely better than 2, but 2 was probably by far the worst movie in this cinematic universe. For a lot of reasons, I thought that I didn't the Whiplash, the villain, I think that was his name. It's been a while since I watched it, and I tried to suppress a lot of that, but just was not was not a good choice for a villain. I don't think Mickey Rourke was a good choice to play that villain. I know he was the hot property in Hollywood coming off the success of The Wrestler, but again, I just didn't think it worked. I didn't think it was that good of a movie. And honestly, the other one that I don't really have a lot of love for is Age of Ultron. That movie just to me just was a long, drawn out movie that really had a hard time holding my attention. And I think part of it was that when you have a movie with that many characters, it's a matter of trying to do something with everyone. So you end up trying to do too much. You end up with like a 2.5 hour film. I think they could have cut out a lot of stuff with like Vision and Scarlet Witch in that movie, and Quicksilver, and it would have made it a little bit cleaner movie. They could have saved it for the extended DVD release. Although I did love Ultron, absolutely loved Ultron in that movie. Probably one of my favorite villains of the cinematic universe. But the movie itself was not a huge fan of. But by far, the worst I've seen was Iron Man 2. Followed shortly thereafter by Iron Man 3. Although full disclosure, I have not seen Thor: Dark World, nor have I seen Doctor Strange. But I haven't heard any feedback that would make me think that those movies will knock either Iron Man sequel off its throne of worst movie in the cinematic universe.
Thor 2 comes close.
Yeah, see, I was going to say that in my take on all this is that the Iron Man 2 and 3, I think I actually have the reverse opinion of you, Joseph. I thought 2 was better than 3, but neither one of them were as good as the original. Not even close. But I think that and this is going to sound kind of weird, but I think my least favorite of the Marvel movies was actually the first Thor. I didn't, The Dark World was not one of my favorite films either, because I'll admittedly say that I've never been a huge Thor fan. I'm not big on the mythology, but the first one in particular, it was just, it was almost paint by number in terms of how you have this guy who comes to Earth, he loses all of his powers, becomes really and truly horribly uninteresting, in my opinion. And the only thing that was really redeeming about it was sort of the interaction that he had with Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman makes a lot of movies redeeming, so I don't blame you there.
She did wonders for the Star Wars prequels, that's for sure. Especially playing against that wooden Hayden Christensen or whatever his name was. But moving on from talking about the Thor films there, and by comparison, the third one, Thor Ragnarok, if I can get my tongue around pronouncing that word properly, that one from the trailers anyway looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, but I think it's because we've now gotten to a point where we've introduced a lot of these characters and we can get into a movie that's a little bit more entertaining as opposed to something that's so stiff and rigid with what they're trying to present. Andrew, what's been one of your low points in the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Honestly, I could not get into the Incredible Hulk. he never captured my attention when I was younger. He's a guy that doesn't really do anything until he just morphs into that non-verbal green monster. And for me, it wasn't a smart movie for the Marvel universe. I know with the older versions of it was iconic, but I feel like they did those versions of it a huge disservice, and I honestly feel like the Marvel universe could do without him completely. So it's more of a personal preference, but it did absolutely nothing for me.
Yeah, it's one of those characters to where it relies on the old. It's kind of the take on Frankenstein's a monster, to where you've got this thing that, not to make another Marvel comparison by saying thing, but you've got this creature who is only recognizable because of his flaws and his inability to be accepted by the world around him. And he really can't be because of the nature of what he is. So, it's one of those things where the character, it's had a lot of stops and starts. You've had multiple people playing this thing over the years. You've gone from, what was it? What was the guy's name who played it originally? Was it not Eric Bana? It was Eric Bana?
Yeah.
It was Eric Bana. I surprised myself. But then, you had Ed Norton playing him. We're talking about the Bruce Banner side of the Incredible Hulk here, obviously. And now I can't pronounce...
Mark Ruffalo?
Yeah, I was going to say I can't pronounce his last name all that well, but he's probably been the best of the three. Eric Bana definitely was the low point, in my opinion. Ed Norton, he's good in about anything he does, but he was not right for Bruce Banner.
Yeah, I think he fell into one of the scenarios where it didn't click. Like Joseph and I agreed on earlier, the fat guy from whatchamacallit?
Parks and Rec?
Yeah, the fat guy from Parks and Rec and even Paul Rudd, like it just clicked, and with Edward Norton for me it never made sense in that movie.
Yeah. I think Mark Ruffalo has done a really good job with it. I know there's been a lot of outcry for the fact that he hasn't been featured as much as some people would like. I think he's... But
again, that when you have 28 characters to highlight, someone's got to get pushed to the side.
That's true.
And granted, I would prefer it to be other characters, but I mean that's what happens when you have so many characters to try to get over and get involved in the storyline.
That's very true. There's going to be somebody who sits on the sidelines at some point in time. Going on from there, Anwar, what's your take on this topic, sir?
I'd say Thor 2 is pretty bad. It was, again, they're not all, I don't think they're all terrible. Iron Man 2 is probably the most boring one, but there are still good parts of it. Like you got to see War Machine, you got to see, well, man, I can't remember. Sam Rockwell as Hammer. I mean, it was pretty awesome. Different things that are pieces that were great. However, as a movie, it just didn't work. Same with Iron Man 3. I know a lot of people complained about the Mandarin reveal. Like, it's not really, that wasn't the Mandarin. Ben Kingsley wasn't. But they paid that off later down the line, either in the movie and also in the a short they released with Thor 2, I think. But they also, I felt like that was a cool twist. There was a lot of cool things in those movies. Again, that's the problem though. They're trying to stuff so much that this ain't like Age of Ultron. Just that's not a terrible movie, but they had good pieces. But they all lead. I think at some point they're all leading up to something else. There's a lot. I mean, because you could do a movie like Age of Ultron. They did that with Civil War. Civil War worked, and they had a gazillion characters in that, but it worked. Everyone played a role. and they kept it to that. Like Ant-Man showed up, and he only needed to be there for that 10, 15 minutes. Good. You didn't have to have him come back or pop up. So I don't know if there's really a terrible movie, but I'd say Thor 2 and Iron Man 2 is probably my least favorite. But they all tie into different things to where, I enjoyed the Incredible Hulk movie. I'm a big Hulk fan as growing up. Watching Bill Bixby as a kid growing up, and Lou Ferrigno's the Incredible Hulk TV show. That was the best. So I have a soft spot for that. But I can see where people wouldn't, and it's definitely. There's a lot of movies like that for sure, but I think those would be the worst aspects. But again, it's like the worst aspects comparing to other comic movies or any other movies in general now. It's like you're not going to get that kind of... I'll take their bad over somebody else's good if it's going to be in some respects. You
bring up a good point there as well, and this is something that I think is a... causality of just the nature of what they've done in expanding the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that you have the big standalone AAA titles like the original Captain America, the original Iron Man, who are tentpoles in this whole thing. But then you've got some of these characters that have they're kind of tertiary characters. They're not necessarily important in the whole thing, and you've also got whole movies that could be treated as such to where there's some stuff that goes on that has a point here, but then was this really worth an entire movie? Could this have maybe been like a Blu-ray extra or something like that? And I think that's what we could talk about next is, have they almost, I don't want to say polluted the waters, but have they definitely diluted them in saying, okay, well, we've got all these characters we can work with, we have to put out all these movies. Has it gotten to a point now where we as an audience are saying, okay, we've gotten so tired of these things and they're now so formulaic that we don't want them anymore? Are we approaching that?
No,
not even close.
No. And there's still so many things they could do, like a Black Widow movie. I think would be
that's
killer.
The movie they need to make.
And there's a lot of meat left on the bone, and I think looking at the money the Guardians 2 is already raked in is case in point, and it'd be interesting to see later this year with Thor and kind of going into 2018 with the movies that are coming out, just to see how much bigger this cash cow can get. But I don't think we're anywhere close to people souring on it and tapping out.
I'll tell you the movie that's going to be the real litmus test for that, and it's going to be the one we haven't talked about or not even really registered, because up until last year it would never be considered in this conversation. But I'm really interested to see how the Spider-Man movie does, because you've had that's a place where you have diluted the waters. You've had how many Spider-Mans within the last almost 10-year period? You know what I mean?
There's been 5 movies in the last 15 years.
Yeah, and you're already
2 different actors. Now we're on our 6th.
3. You're on your 3rd different actor with Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. And Tom Holland's been the best Spider-Man
exactly.
out of all of them.
And I think that's where they're going to succeed. They finally got someone who captures the character. They don't have 32-year-old Tobey Maguire trying to play a teenager.
I get that,
and
I get that.
And they got. I think they got it right. And I think audiences, Spider-Man's an insanely popular character, probably one of the most popular characters of all time as far as a Marvel property goes. So I think people are always going to give it a chance.
I think so too, but I think
named Wolverine, obviously, but
it's not what now.
Not named Wolverine, I should say, but
I'd argue he's top. I'd argue he's probably top 5 in comics history. That's a different topic, but I'd argue definitely say that. I'm just interested to see, because that is a place that moviegoers have gone to the well within the last 3 years. It was Amazing Spider-Man 2 coming out in 2014. So again, you're right. People love Spider-Man. It's going to be what it is, but I could also see where people would be a little more not hesitant, but I could feel like really another Spider-Man movie. Like they wouldn't make the connection that, oh, this is a different Spider-Man that was in the Marvel movies, which I loved. I don't know if the casual moviegoer is going to assume that the way we are all excited about it, because we know that this dude is awesome and we know the movie's going to be awesome.
I guess it comes down to how they market it. Again, because if we've seen Captain America: Civil War, of course we got a glimpse of Spider-Man and how fun he's going to be, and luckily too, it's not another origin story. We're Spider-Man already established, so I think that'll definitely help as well. Because if we got another origin story, people would have killed it.
Yeah, I think that's something that has, hurt other. I don't know, we're not going to get into talking about the DC movies, DC Comics, and Warner Brothers all that much in this show here. That might be a topic for a different program. But
I'd rather talk about Avatar than DC.
Wow, that's well, no, that's not true because one of my top 5 favorite comic movies of all time is DC. 2 DC movies occupy that space.
But we're talking about
Watchmen is way better than a lot of that stuff.
But in looking at what they've done so often in retelling the story of, for example, Batman, because you went and you made 3 of what are probably the most idyllic films that you could ever hope to make in terms of establishing a comic book character as a believable hero. You might as well go ahead and say, at least in my opinion. And then you turn around and you say, okay, well, none of that happened. Ben Affleck is now your Batman. And I think people sour on, these repetitive origin stories as we've talked about here because they want to say, all right, we've seen that, we know where he comes from, let's get into something that's new and interesting.
Exactly, especially with these origins. I mean, these are characters like Batman's been around for 70 years, Spider-Man's been around for 60 years. I mean, we anybody, even like casual, lay people who aren't really into comic books know these origin stories. And I think if done right, you can do it again, like Nolan did with Batman Begins, but then you can do it horribly wrong, like they did everything horribly wrong in Batman versus Superman.
Not everything. That's a different topic for a different day.
Yes, yeah. Why are we talking about all this DC stuff? Let's get back on the Marvel train.
I tell you. Well, that having been said, let's try and right the ship here by taking a break. This is the Triple R podcast, Rebels, Rogues, and Redbeards, talking the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We appreciate you guys tuning in. If you are not already a subscriber, please go ahead and consider subscribing to us on any of the media platforms that we are broadcasting through, whether it be Your Listen, YouTube, or maybe, I'm not saying this is going to happen by the time you guys hear this, but maybe iTunes. I don't know. Maybe, possibly. We'll have to see what happens there.
It is coming soon, I promise.
There you go. But no, definitely, if you guys would consider giving us a subscribe, it'd be fantastic. Always like hearing commentary and feedback from our audience as well. So we'll be back here in a few moments with our next segment. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're interested in a getaway to Central Florida but don't know where to start, you should contact Magical Wishes Travel with the Truesdales to help you plan a truly unforgettable vacation. Magical Wishes Travel with the Truesdales can handle booking all aspects of your trip, from hotel rooms to theme park tickets and stroller rentals to dining reservations. Magical Wishes Travel with the Truesdales can take the stress out of planning your next vacation. Contact them today via their Facebook page, www.facebook.com/MWT-Truesdales. That's facebook.com/MWT-Truesdales. Welcome back, everybody. Appreciate you guys joining us as we are here on the Triple R podcast talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And thus far, we've been through a couple of different ways of looking at this whole thing. We've talked about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We've talked about some of our favorite aspects of the MCU. And then we turned the tables and we talked about some of the things that we don't like about the MCU. And now we're going to turn the table one more time and talk about what we're looking forward to and what's to come from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I know Marvel at one point in time had this phased layout of what they were bringing in the future. They had Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. I think they might even be talking about Phase 4 now in terms of what they're going to be bringing out post the eventuality that comes after the whole Infinity War saga. But at this point in time, I want to talk about what we're looking forward to down the road here with Marvel. We have a lot of possibilities here in looking at this, but Anwar, I'll throw it to you. What's something that's on your radar that you're looking forward to coming down the pipe from Marvel?
Infinity War. I
Yeah.
mean, that's kind of the culmination of all of this, especially when they started introducing characters that weren't in Avengers, such as your Guardians and Ant-Mans and Strange, and then just you set this table. You have the Infinity Stones out there, and you've been talking about them up. You want to see what's going down with these. You want to see, what's the big, why is it so important that these stones are appearing? Or it's not just a Easter egg for fans as much as it needs to be the actual. There's your end game, your payoff, and I'm really excited that that's going to be the next set of things. I don't know what beyond that. I mean, it's interesting. They've been kind of quiet as far as looking past that, other than naming certain movies. But even then, the movies that they've already announced that'll come after Infinity War, like Guardians 3, the word is that'll be a prequel of sorts to the Avengers movie.
I had not heard that.
Yeah, that's something that James Gunn had talked about, that it's a possibility that it would be almost, so it'd almost be like what Volume 2 is, where it's only taking place a couple months or a few months after the first one. This one would take place X amount of time after or before the Avengers movie, because I think I had read this somewhere, and again, I'm sure someone can correct me, but I read somewhere that the Avengers movie is going to take like 4 years after Guardians, or something. There's going to be some sort of quote unquote time jump, to where it's going to be like fast forward to, a couple years later, and this is how things are going, with Captain America kind of on his own, doing his own thing, Steve Rogers, and then Iron Man's got his group of Avengers, and how that all ties in with Thanos. But I'm feeling that Thor will kind of the next Thor movie will tie into that, because Guardians, there's a bet, or not a bet, but me and Joseph have a really good hunch. And if you saw the end credits scroll through Guardians, you kind of saw this hint that the Guardians will be involved with the Thor Ragnarok movie. Not just from the color scheme and the fun feel, but there's an actual character from Thor Ragnarok that wasn't in Guardians, but was in the end credit scene, the end credits. So that's one of those, like, well, why would that person be there?
It wasn't just coincidence.
Yeah, that's not coincidences don't live in the MCU, which
No,
is one
not.
thing I love, is like everything is tied together. It all fits, and I think that's pretty awesome. And it's very relative to the medium that comic books come from, or these movies come from, that everything is a tie-in. Everything has consequences, and I think, that's a good thing that movies, for better or worse, I know that one thing that Marvel has done that is everything has to be connected now in movies or in TV. Like, everything has to have this own universe. But I think it only works when the universe has already been established for decades with Marvel. I mean, regardless of how many times this character's died and come back, or this guy was a bad guy, now he's a good guy and all that, at least there was some set of template. There was something there. Whereas when you try to fit that stuff with like what's Universal, with the Universal monsters, they're trying to tie the Mummy and Dr. Jekyll and Hyde and all this stuff together. It's kind of like, okay, you're getting hokey. There's no basis for that. It's not the Monster Squad. Now, if they made another Monster Squad, that would be awesome.
Yes.
But it's not. It's just, it seems just forced. Whereas with the Marvel stuff, the reason it works is because it's all tied together. It's all been tied together, and now they're just putting it in a different medium, not necessarily creating it from scratch and saying, all right, here we go. Everything's been borrowed. So I really enjoy that. I'm really looking forward to see what they do. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised that after the Infinity movies, after once it's done, I could see everyone just being recast or going in different directions. I'd hate to, I think Chris Evans has done a great job as Captain America, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., obviously. But I could also see where they go in different directions because of the story's been told already. Now, do they have to do another origin story? Hopefully not. I hope they stay away from that, because everything's pretty fresh. But I think you could, if need be, you'd have to go down a different route, or you could always go the Logan route by introducing a newer character or an established character in the comics, new to the movies, that kind of just carries the same mantle and same name, going forward. You never know.
That's a definite possibility with a lot of these characters, and I don't think we've gotten to a point yet, excuse me, where the well has run dry in looking at potential characters that could be involved with the Marvel Universe going forward. I still think that you're going to have a opportunity for some more of the characters that have been, sold off in terms of their rights to a Fox or to a Sony or whoever else. I think that you're going to see Disney continue to pursue ownership of those properties, and they're going to bring them back home. So you're going to have, a Fantastic Four, hopefully, film that gets done properly. And that's something that I'm looking forward to, is just the continuation of them bringing these characters back to where they should be, because that's going to be what continues to give the Marvel Cinematic Universe longevity, is bringing these AAA characters back into the fold, to where you don't have the Fantastic Four, for example. I keep using them all the time because they're a group of characters that has been treated so unfairly by the companies that have had access to them. But definitely, this is a joke that I've used with people before, is that if the best Fantastic Four movie has not even been a Fantastic Four movie, it was actually The Incredibles, in my opinion, because that, to me, is what a family of superheroes could be. We talked about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 having those family relationships. Well, The Incredibles, to me, had all that as well, but even more so in some regards, because it was a true blue family unit. And Fantastic Four could be that as well. So I would love to see them pursue ownership of that property again. We're talking money ultimately, and whether or not, I think it's Fox that owns the rights to those characters currently, whether or not they would eventually say, okay, we've done what we can to ruin this thing for you, go ahead and take it. It's almost like what some people accused Marvel of doing with the X-Men characters in the comics here recently, in saying, okay, well, we're going to continue to whittle down the existing number of characters that are there so that this becomes almost a property that has no value, so that we can eventually buy this back from, here again, Fox, because the fact that they don't have anything to work with. They've told all the stories that there were to tell, seemingly, that people were really interested in. So what else are they going to do, since Marvel's not making any new ones?
You make the right argument with the wrong characters. With Marvel, with the X-Men, they've got like a gazillion X-Men comics now. They're back to kind of what they were almost in the 90s. There's even an X-Men 92 comic book, which is basically the cartoon series in a comic book form, which is basically kind of like that version, quote unquote, of the X-Men. So they're doing their X-Men. That's one team that they I know that was a thing where they whittled down. Like, you can't have any more mutants, and then mutants are dying off. So then your point, that's somewhat correct. But now there's like two different X-Men teams with two different X-Men books. And then you've got the X-Force, and you've got all these different characters. It's kind of hard for them to say no to that. However, the team that you were dead on with the Fantastic Four, because of the fact that Marvel, at the time when the last Fantastic Four movie came out, they had just canceled the Fantastic Four series because they tied them up and wrapped it up with a Secret Wars comic event in 15, which is a phenomenal event, and Fantastic Four featured predominantly in it. And the run that Jonathan Hickman, who oversaw this whole event, that he did on Fantastic Four was awesome. However, with Marvel and Fox fighting it out for whatever reason, as far as, like, I guess because Fox dropped the ball where they succeeded with X-Men, Marvel has been a little bit more childish, and I say that not because they're not wrong, but because it's I'm not gonna let you play with my toys, or I'm gonna tell on you, kind of thing. Because I just, a couple days ago, and it's interesting you bring that up, a rumor came out, and Joseph will appreciate this because I know Joseph's a collector of these. So Upper Deck is going back into the comic book card business, and they're going to release these sketches, like this new set. Well, apparently guidelines had come out. Somebody had found some guidelines for these new cards, and basically they are to omit any Fantastic Four character from the Marvel line. And basically whittle down the X-Men characters that weren't the ones that a consumer's going to want. So that I thought was interesting. So I think you're right as far as what Marvel, doing as far as but it's not X-Men. I'll tell you that. It's definitely Fantastic Four, which for me, because of the said Jonathan Hickman run with that, I would love to see him. I'd love to see a Fantastic Four movie done right.
Yep. It's good to hear more people are looking forward to Fantastic Four than just myself, because I think those characters have been kind of mistreated so much that it's almost like, why do I want to see that again? But Andrew, how about you, sir? What are you looking forward to in the future from the MCU?
As I mentioned earlier, the next step in the Ant-Man story, Ant-Man and the Wasp, there hasn't been a whole lot of details around it. I think they start filming pretty soon, or they just started. So I'm excited just to hear anything that comes out of that and to eventually see it. But also to touch on what Joseph and Anwar were saying earlier about Spider-Man, they're being given that chance to do a reboot, and I think including Tony Stark and giving that sort of relation to it, I think that's going to allow people to understand that this is a new Spider-Man. It's a fresh start. It's a fresh beginning, and as it was mentioned earlier as well, Tom Holland being Spider-Man, Peter Parker, it seems like it's going to work. It's a no-brainer, and I'm excited for that. I think that's the first Spider-Man movie I've been excited for in a long time.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to seeing what Tom Holland does, and I think the benefit that they're going to reap from incorporating him into the movie is that he is a relative unknown. He doesn't bring in the baggage of a Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield or really anyone else. So that it's a good bit of casting, in my opinion, because they have somebody who can really hang their hat on this, and he's got the chops for it, in my opinion. Because in seeing the stuff that he did as part of the other films and seeing him in the trailers and whatnot for Spider-Man: Homecoming, definitely looks like he's going to knock one out of the park. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with that movie overall here coming up later this year. Joseph, how about you? What are you looking forward to out of the MCU in the coming months and years?
Definitely looking forward to Spider-Man. It's funny. I think Sony, they were like 2 years too soon on Andrew Garfield. I kind of wish they could have a redo, because in the past year or so, he's just really blown up. Thanks in part to again doing a tremendous job in Hacksaw Ridge.
Wonderful movie.
But I think this new kid they got is going to do a tremendous job. I think for the first time ever, he really embodies like the attitude of Spider-Man for me. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. So I think that movie's going to have a good blend of comedy and action, and it's really going to be a really big hit. But again, I think that's one that everybody's expecting to. I think we got some sleepers kind of coming up. I think Black Panther is going to be tremendous.
Yes. I'm sorry, I feel like I should have mentioned that. But that movie's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I totally left that one out as well.
And also, we haven't really talked about the TV series. Which have primarily been airing on Netflix, but I know that they're working on a Punisher series as well, so I'm really looking forward to that. And obviously, I loved the character in season 2 of Deadpool, or not of Daredevil, I should say, not Deadpool. another D named hero, but
not a D-lister.
Not a D-lister at all. No. I absolutely loved the Daredevil Netflix series. And I'm really excited to see, because again, unlike the cinematic universe theatrically, which are very family friendly, even though they are superhero movies with violence, it's still okay to take a 12-year-old brother to go see. Whereas a lot of the series on Netflix, they're gritty, they're dark, and it's actually just what Punisher needs for a series. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. But that, and like I said, I think I definitely think I have full confidence that Spider-Man is going to be a lot of fun. I'm a little reserved on Thor Ragnarok. I'm going in with tepid expectations, but I'm hoping to be pleasantly surprised. But again, I think Black Panther is going to be a sleeper hit for him. That it's going to really be a surprise hit, as we're going to find out early next year.
You were talking about, excuse me, Luke Cage there a moment ago. Fun fact: Luke Cage is actually from the town that I live in right now. I'll say the actor who portrays Luke Cage, Mike Coulter. So yeah, I know some people who know his family, and it's been kind of funny because whenever that series debuted last year, suddenly you saw people walking around the little St. Matthews, South Carolina, wearing Luke Cage T-shirts, and it was like, oh, you guys are part of the family, and yeah, they sure are. But,
and the other thing too, I think that it's not on the slate, and I think it's a huge miss. But again, I think there's a lot of money to be made with a Black Widow movie. Scarlett Johansson is one of the biggest Hollywood stars in the franchise. Obviously, Downey Jr. being the biggest, but I think she's right up there, top 2 or 3.
But can she support a movie herself though? Because she can.
She can support a good movie. I mean, like look at Ghost in the Shell, and I don't blame her for that. I blame a lot of other things for that.
I was going to say I haven't seen Ghost in the Shell, but I didn't know if it was going to be evidence of what she might be capable of in terms of bringing an audience with her.
But
I think she can.
And here's the thing: you have like 47 other characters that you could intermingle, and it could be a Black Widow movie. But if you know that Hulk's going to be there or Hawkeye. Someone else that could be another hook for you, and then ties it all into the universe. But unfortunately, we're not going to see that. And I don't know if it's their reluctance to get behind a female-driven movie.
It's not,
or whatever reason. We're just not going to see it
because they're doing Captain Marvel, which is going to be female-driven. They've got Emily Blunt in that role, and they're going to give her a big push as far as like that movie's going to get a lot of attention. Especially, and it'd be interesting to see how much attention it does. And I again hate to jump to this, but once Wonder Woman comes out, and then people see how that ends up, because it's going to be telling for different, a female-driven character, and with the lead actress who's again, it's like, hey, to your point, Joseph, you're right, because Black Panther, I'm gonna tell you right now, they're gonna have like the Winter Soldier and a couple probably other characters pop up in that. That was teased in the Captain America movie last year, but Captain Marvel for sure is. Again, though, as much as that's cool for me, I wish it was Black Widow, hands down, because I think you're right. I think she can carry a movie, and I think because she's already established too, it's not like a new character to where you have to kind of reestablish everything about her. Nope, she's already known. Everyone knows what she does, and let her do a movie.
So would this be?
I think her taking that role really it restarted her career. She hasn't had many bad movies, but that solidified her ability to really tell a story with a character.
So to jump on the discussion,
and also, I mean, she's very easy on the eyes and looks really good in a leather jumpsuit.
Oh yeah, I mean, if she proposed to me, I would accept.
So,
all right.
To take the discussion a bit further there, would you guys be more inclined to have the movie be set in current times, or would you want this to flesh out more of her backstory as like, the assassin turned covert agent type thing?
I'd be okay with something to show how she got the shield, because I mean they alluded to how she was an assassin and she's done stuff that before she was a quote unquote a good guy. So it'd be interesting to see that side of her. To hey, how did you end up here? Because then you could reintroduce, or not reintroduce, but you could have Sam Jackson come back as Nick Fury in that movie. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. You could do side story current, but I almost think that for once there's actually a good reason to have a sort of quote unquote origin story, because in the comics, and even if you tie it to Agent Carter and the TV show and the MCU stuff, they allude to the Black Widow, that it's not just a character name as much as a program for assassins, for female assassins from Russia. You know what I mean? Like so there's meat on the bone still on a prequel / origin story with Black Widow that could actually work and be interesting versus being bitten by a radioactive spider or somebody's parents dying.
Yeah.
If her parents die and are bitten by a radioactive spider, I can't help that. I just can't.
she had to get the Spider tie-in there at some point, I guess. But, I definitely think overall we've got a lot to look forward to. There's a lot of things that they could throw at us that we haven't even talked about. There's so many characters in the Marvel Universe that they're not all mainstream and well known, but they're certainly there. And it'll be really interesting to see what they do beyond the Infinity War films to see who comes next, because I think something that we're more than likely going to have to accept is not only the potential for some of these characters as we've known them to change, some of them might not be around in the future. And we're talking about the potential for some of these characters to get killed off, and that's, I think, where we're ultimately going to be faced with here, because, we've already seen them give Quicksilver the axe, which was kind of interesting, because in the MCU, you have Quicksilver dying, and then by contrast, and spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the X-Men movies, Scarlet Witch, the character, dies in the Fox X-Men movies. So you have them sort of playing off of each other there. But definitely a lot to look forward to, a lot coming down the pipe from Marvel and Disney. And I think, we're definitely looking forward to seeing what they have, not only in the next couple of months, but in the next couple of years, and it'll just keep on going. So great stuff, fantastic work by all the folks involved, as we've already said, in establishing a universe and something that has true continuity. And I think that's where others have, really floundered, and I'll go ahead and say failed in a lot of attempts to make something like this happen in the past. But all that having been said, we're going to go to our next break. We will be back momentarily to round out the show with our good old Unpopular Opinions segment. Appreciate you guys tuning in here for the Triple R podcast. Stay tuned.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Are you looking for custom T-shirts with a quick turnaround? Then look no further than SOS Custom Tees, your source for custom T-shirts, vinyl decals, tumblers, and more. Contact them today via their website, www.soscustomtees.com, and be sure to check out all the designs that are available in their online store. Welcome back, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in and hanging out with us here on the Triple R podcast. Got myself, Joseph, Andrew, and also Anwar being a part of this program here as we talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But before we go further in talking about unpopular opinions and wrapping up the show, wanted to talk for a moment here about a association we have as media partners with Powerbomb.tv. Powerbomb.tv is an independent wrestling video streaming network similar to FlowSlam or the High Spots network, which is available via the web and also mobile devices. They feature over 30 promotions, and they will be hosting upwards of 165 events. The company plans to launch on Roku and Apple TV for their grand opening event on Sunday, June 11th, 2017. And that show is going to be titled Break the Barrier 2017. And again, it's happening June 11th. At that point in time, Powerbomb TV will host the program, an independent wrestling festival, as they're calling it, starting at 3 p.m. at the GSW Arena in Old Forge, Pennsylvania. The event will stream live via Powerbomb.tv, again, through the power of the internet. Talent announced for the card thus far includes Joey Janela, Jigsaw, and Colt Cabana. They've also got a number of international stars from the world of Lucha Libre who are going to be participating. This is a lot of folks from the world of Chikara, so you would expect to have a lot of colorful characters involved. In addition, they've got associations that have been built with promotions such as C4 Wrestling from Canada, Cara Lucha Promociones in Mexico, IWRG in Mexico, Georgia Premier Wrestling, Deep South Championship Wrestling, Grand Slam Wrestling, Tier 1 Wrestling, and Top Rope Promotions. You can get tickets on sale, you can get tickets online now for $15, and if you're a Powerbomb.tc subscriber, you can reserve your ticket for free. You can do that online now at Powerbomb.tv/get tickets, and we will have links to all that good stuff in the description of this particular episode of the Triple R podcast, so you don't have to actually pay attention to anything I just said. Go on down in that description, get the link for powerbomb.tv, and join in the program as they move forward with that service. All right, want to wrap up the show here with unpopular opinions. And, we've talked a lot about Marvel here, but I want to shift things over to the other side of the coin as it relates to superhero movies. Yeah, that's right. We're talking about Warner Brothers and DC. I think that this is going to be my unpopular opinion. You guys might think of it as a popular opinion, but who cares? I really and truly think that the efforts they're putting in with the Justice League and all that, it's not going to last a decade. You're going to have these movies come out, and then they're going to be, if not wholesale flops, they're going to be unsuccessful enough to where they have no other choice but to say, hey, we tried. Marvel has us beat. We got to do something else. So, I was almost on board with Wonder Woman. Suicide Squad, to me, was just a terrible movie. They think they tried too hard in trying to establish these villains as people who are recognizable, that were potentially characters you could even cheer for. I think that was a horrible decision creatively, but I think going forward with Wonder Woman in particular, I was almost on board until one of the recent trailers. And then when I saw that thing with a lot of the slow motion, a lot of the Zack Snyder stuff that's kind of become synonymous with those movies, it was like, all right, no, this is going to be terrible as well. So I think they've got maybe 5 or 6 years tops, and then it's going to be retconned one more time. Andrew, how about you? What's your unpopular opinion for the week?
I honestly, so I haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and I know it's been getting rave reviews, but I feel like it doesn't have the best chance for me to beat the original. I know you guys were all, you all enjoyed it a lot, but I don't think something can be beat like that. Like, one of my all-time favorite movies is Back to the Future, and the second one was good, but you can just never top the original. So I'm sure you guys will probably disagree with me. Some of you might, but I'm going to try to see it within the next week, hopefully this weekend, possibly. So I might have to put my foot in my mouth. But
personal opinion, Back to the Future 3 better than Back to the Future 2.
I'll second you on that.
There you go. Well, Anwar, since you spoke up, I'll go to you next, sir. What's your unpopular opinion for the week?
My unpopular opinion of the week is regarding Marvel, but from the comic standpoint of their new event they just launched called Secret Empire. If you read about it, a lot of it's not focused on the actual event itself as much as the theme of the event, which is basically Steve Rogers, Captain America, has been brainwashed within the last year in the comic to believe that he's been a sleeper agent for Hydra, and now is trying to take over the U.S. as the head of Hydra, because in his mind he's always been Hydra. It was instead of S.H.I.E.L.D. or said anything else, it was Hydra that provided, and it was all because of again, it's just comic book manifestation is because of the human a sentient form of the cosmic cube who restored him back to his younger days because he had turned old due to not having a super soldier serum in him. But then the clone of the Red Skull had been able to manipulate those memories in his head at the time she made him young, and so basically he's always thought it's been Hydra. So now everyone's all pissy about the fact that he's going to be the bad guy, and how could Captain America be the bad guy? First off, it's a comic book. Don't believe so much. Don't believe the hype on that. B, I think it's a very good comparison. That people are upset. Some people are upset that it's not a good. If anything, the way they view the world and the people view the world in the U.S. and whatnot, it should be that Captain America is a beacon of light, not the villain. But I'm thinking, well, no, Marvel's doing exactly what for some people, they view that America's going down the drain, or is doing this or doing that, and they're not. Everybody's in fear of this. All the politics and all the bull that's going around. They're just trying to. They think that Captain America should be above that. Well, no. If he's supposed to be the representation or a symbol of that, then yes, he should be. It works in their favor as being the bad guy. And at the end of the day, obviously in the book, I'm sure at some point Captain America is going to be defeated or something's going to happen. But it should show that, hey, it seems insurmountable when you've got Captain America who's supposed to be the symbol and he's the bad guy. Well, guess what? You use that to showcase your newer heroes or different heroes that may not get that spotlight. That's kind of it's kind of what Guardian that worked so well about Guardians. It took a bunch of characters. And these characters, here's the thing: the Guardians characters aren't even the original Guardians of the Galaxy themselves. They were thrown together as a hey, they're the new Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a second version because they were just a bunch of cast-off characters no one ever used. Well, this is an opportunity for those characters like that, or characters that could truly be a symbol for America in the sense of stopping the bad guy of Captain America. Like a Miss Marvel. Kamala Khan, she'd be a great character, or Miles Morales, or Peter Parker, or Spider-Man, something different. Then it's. I think people are just buying into too much in the hype and not trying to give the book its merit and due. And I think that's unfortunate because I think it's a good story to tell, but people want to look into the politics of it and try to be moan and cry about, oh, Captain America shouldn't be this or that. Get over it. It's a book. But at the same time, if you truly want it to be a symbol, then it is a symbol. You just don't want it to be the symbol it is now. You want everything to be like, well, in comic books, everything's normal. No, guess what? Even the good guys turn bad. Every character that's been a good guy has been a bad guy at least once. Unless your name's Ricky Steamboat, that's never happened. I mean, even Batman technically Batman is a bad guy. Let's be realistic. He doesn't kill someone; he maims the shit out of them. But I mean, he doesn't. I mean, the Punisher is a bad guy. It's just that he's celebrated as like, oh, well, he's doing a good thing killing bad guys. Well, that's called breaking the law, and it's still called murder. It's not, people want to even look at a character like Darth Vader. At the end of the day, Darth Vader's a bad guy, yet people want to humanize him in movies and like, oh, well, he had such a terrible, he was ripped away from his mom and all this happened and everything. And it's like, okay, that's great. However, he still killed a bunch of Jedi and he still continued to kill a bunch of people. Some of these Jedis were kids and not even Jedi. I mean, you know what I mean? Yet, oh man, who's your favorite villain? Oh, Darth Vader's the man. Oh, okay. You're okay with that, but God forbid Captain America turns bad and everyone loses their shit.
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
that's two curse words for me already. So
you're approaching Joseph territory here now.
I'm approaching Joseph territory. There you go. But I just want to say that I think people need to stop and just kind of enjoy the ride, and also just remember it's a book. It's supposed to represent. It's a piece of cultural that's supposed of cultural media that's supposed to represent. The reality of things, and I think it does it well. I think just people don't want that to be what it's representing. Yep. So there you go. Sorry, it was a little spiel, but I just wanted to get that off the chest.
Oh no, it definitely applies here because people forget about the fact that these are comic books, and guess what? It's going to come around again to where the guy who's a villain right now is probably going to have some turn happen in his persona to where he becomes a different person at some point in the
Magneto
narrative.
Was leading the X-Men for the longest time.
Yep.
So was Emma Frost.
There you go.
And those are two of the biggest name villains of X-Men lore, but yet everyone's cool. Like, hey, it's Magneto. Oh, well, he's probably, it's Magneto. It's okay. He's turned to leaf. Well, I'm sure it can go the other way. I think people just don't like it to go the other way, unfortunately.
Yeah. People don't like to see Hulk Hogan stand in the middle of the ring with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. It's just one of those things.
But it sells tickets because guess what the number one comic book in April was?
There you go.
Ding, ding, ding. Secret Empire.
There you go. Joseph, how about you, sir?
I just wish people would remember these are fictional characters. It isn't real. Just like pro wrestling, comic books aren't real. I know we get lost in the stories and we get lost with the suspension of disbelief, but at the end of the day, these are fictional characters. But before I get to my unpopular opinion, I do want to kind of jump on something Robert mentioned earlier. with as far as the DC, the new DC cinematic universe. I agree. I don't think they're going to be able to sustain any level of success. I think it's just going to be a money pit for Warner Brothers. I think they're going to lose their ass. And so far, there hasn't really been many bright spots, if any. The Superman, the Man of Steel was horrible. Batman vs Superman is probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Did have some highlights. Definitely enjoyed. I do enjoy Ben Affleck as Batman, and I'm excited to see kind of what he brings to that franchise. But again, I don't think they're trying to do in such a short period of time that Marvel's been doing for over a decade, and it's just not going to work, and they're not going to be able to sustain that success. So I'm right there with you, Robert. But my unpopular opinion actually comes from the world of Star Wars, and we've already mentioned Star Wars a couple times in this episode. But really, for me, and I got a lot of heat for this on the social medias earlier this week when I said, and I stand by what I said, but C-3PO is the worst character in the entire Star Wars universe.
What?
And,
who gave you crap about that?
Well, I got crap when I said that Jar Jar was better than, or I said Jar Jar using the mathematics symbol for greater than 3PO. That's what got me heat. But I stand by. I mean, as annoying as Jar Jar was and is, C-3PO is just a whiny little bitch, and I hated him in every single movie. I just wish he would die. I know he's an android. Just, again,
3PO is he's sort of a persistent escort mission, to use a video game term there. He's always seemingly in trouble. He's never really done anything, and I'll agree with you, he's never really done much to progress any of the stories. He
adds no value. He's not funny. It's just, I think the only reason he's worth a damn is from the line where he spouted out the odds of their of getting to the asteroid field, and Han Solo goes, "Never tell me the odds." That's really the only redeeming quality he's ever had, and it didn't even come from him. It came from Han Solo's response to him. Again, just I can't stand the character. To me, he's the worst character in the entire Star Wars universe.
Wow.
Again, just adds no value. Just a whiny little bitch. And he's not even in he's like 14 steps below Jar Jar.
And I want to throw this in there because people forever have talked about Jar Jar Binks as being this terrible character. But the thing about it is, if you pay attention to the progression of that character, he had a point in being there all along, because the fact that he escalates himself from being a war hero, you might as well go ahead and say that, to being a part of the Galactic Senate, he had that progression, and it was, again, all part of Palpatine's grand plan there, to have him in there to allow him to usurp all the governance that was there. But without him being there to give that vote of no confidence and to contribute to the vote thereof, the thing doesn't even turn out the way it's supposed to be. So he is a crucial character, and yes, he's goofy. Yes, he was there to sell toys and this, that, and the other, but he had a point. There was a reason for him being there, and I think too many people miss that in looking at the prequels as a whole. Yeah, they weren't that great, ultimately, in looking at the whole body of work that is Star Wars. But there were a lot worse characters, in my opinion, in the whole saga beyond Jar Jar. So that's my 2 cents. But to go about wrapping things up here, I want to throw it to Anwar, as he's got a special message that he wants to bring out, and talking about something that's near and dear to his heart here. Anwar, throw it away, sir.
I just want to give a shout out and promote an organization in Charlotte that does work with children's hospitals and providing them consoles, video games, and opportunities to think about other things that are not the things that they're dealing with, such as any kind of health issues or behavioral, any things in life that may be there for. But heartmeter.org is the organization name, and they provide video games and consoles to a lot of the Charlotte area children's hospitals. I know there's the Levine Hospital. I've been there. I've personally been there for a checkup with my son, and I've seen their stickers and stuff there. It's through a friend of mine I went to college with, a great guy named Andrew Jenkins. He's like I said, he does this on the as his career, and I think he's doing an awesome job with this. They have an event on 6/4 at with the Alexander Youth Net, and it's from 1 to 4 p.m. and they're still looking for volunteers, I believe. You can reach out to @heartmeter.org on Twitter, and they'll be playing games, and they'll just be doing things with kids. Just basically you're going to be volunteering to play video games, Mario Kart with kids. Now, whether or not you want to beat them, that's up to you, how you want to feel about yourself afterwards.
I would destroy those kids and show no mercy.
I'm sure. But I will say that
I suck at Mario Kart, so they would probably beat me. But if we were playing Madden, oh yeah, I'd destroy those kids. But either way, it's a great cause, and I'm really excited for it. And I can't wait.
And they do take donations, so please, if you can't make it or anything, again, heartmeter.org, and the Twitter handle is heartmeter.org or @heartmeter.org, and they'll take donations. It doesn't have to be anything current. So if you have old Wii's that you don't use or anything like that, or PS2s, PS1s, whatever, they'll take, and they'll provide to these hospitals to give kids an opportunity to relax and give them something to do when, at the end of the day, sometimes that's all they need. So just something I want to shout out to and provide. Again, check them out. It's a great organization. That's about all I got to say on that.
That's a fantastic thing they're doing there. Joseph, go ahead.
It is. It's absolutely phenomenal. I'm really excited with what they're doing. I think, again, it's a great cause, and it's a great way to use that form of entertainment to raise awareness and really and boost spirits and raise morale in a time when things may not always be that high. So it's just a good way to just escape and have some fun. And video games provide that. And again, I think it's a great cause. It's a worthwhile foundation, and I'm definitely going to support it 100%.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where you talk about, anytime you can provide a little bit of relief to someone who is, taking treatment or whatever else, it's definitely a worthwhile cause, especially when it's little kids. It's become something that's near and dear to my heart, especially since, my wife and I, we have our little boy now. I can't look at anything that involves a child suffering the same way as I did previously, because it's a little bit too close to home, a little bit too familiar anymore. But we'll definitely have some links to the foundation there in the description of this episode, and give you some opportunities to participate and to be a part of the program there. So definitely check those out, and I want to say thank you to Anwar for bringing that up, and also want to say thank you to Joseph and Andrew for joining us on this episode of the Triple R podcast, Rebels, Rogues, and Redbeards. Once again, if you have not already, please consider giving us a subscribe on whatever media platform it is that you're enjoying this program. We do appreciate your continued being a part of our little community that we're developing here around this show, and definitely look forward to hearing from you from comment sections on any of those platforms as well. All that having been said, we appreciate you tuning in, folks. We'll see you down the road.
And one last thing, I'm going to take those kids a Nintendo 64 with some classic WCW NWO Revenge, and show them what real fun wrestling games are.
Texas Cloverleaf. Fake thing.
Possibly.
Texas Cloverleaf.
We'll see you guys down the road.